Hey guys, I found this old parallel port scanner at a secondhand shop. Really no idea if it works. It didn't come with a parallel cable or a power supply. I managed to find a parallel cable, and it's a pretty standard 12-volt supply. So I've got a few of those kicking around already. Cosmetically, it's in pretty good shape. It does need a bit of a cleaning, but there's no yellowing on the plastic. Nothing is broken, so that's always good. Now I managed to track down the manual. This is a UMAX Astra 2000P parallel port scanner. That means it connects to the DB25 parallel port on the computer. It should work with Windows 95, 98, or NT4, but of course that'd be way too easy. No, I want to try and get this scanner working under Slackware Linux 9.1 from 2003. So let's hook it up to my Pentium 2, and we'll run a few tests. So I'm going to log in as the user Annika, and then we'll pop into the GUI. Now let's load up a command prompt. And of course, since we're configuring something new, I'm going to have to switch users to root. And let's start by running the scan image -L just to see if it might pick up a scanner. And that would be a no. That'd be way too easy. So let's check our kernel modules and see if we've got the parallel port modules loaded. Yeah, we've got an LP, parport PC, and ppdev. So the necessary modules are already loaded. That's a good start. Now, if they weren't, you could always go into etc rc.d, rc.modules, and add them in there. Okay, and if I check my dmessage output, yeah, it does show that a parallel port was detected on boot. You see it there at IRQ7 and IO address 378. That's pretty standard. Okay, so we probably just need to configure the backend for the scanner. Let's go into etc sane.d. And we know this is a UMAX parallel port scanner. So we're going to be looking at the umax_pp.conf. So you can see it's set to use the port dev parport 0. That corresponds to LPT1 under DOS. If I had two different parallel ports in this system, that might have to be dev parport 1. Depends on where it's plugged in. But in this case, I've got it on the primary, or actually the only, parallel port in the system. And the only other thing we need to change in here is down at the bottom, we need to specify the model of the scanner. Now, technically, this is actually a UMAX 2000P, but for some reason, it seems to identify as a 1600. So I'm just going to give Linux what it wants and tell it it's a 1600. And let's save that file. Then there's one other item in etc sane.d that we need to modify. That's going to be the dll.conf. And we're going to uncomment the line for the UMAX PP. Good, and we'll save that file as well. Okay, so let's rerun that scan image -L and see if it detects a scanner. And there we go. Now it sees a UMAX Astra 1600P on parport 0. Let's try and scan from the command line. I'm going to use that same command, scan image, only this time, instead of just probing, we're actually going to scan and put the output into root image.pnm. Okay, so that appears to have worked. Now I'm just going to copy that image over to Annika's home directory and change the ownership so that she can actually see that file. And now if I load up GQ View, I can open that image, and you see we've got a nice grayscale scan of my soldering station manual. Okay, so that scan was performed as root. Really not a great idea from a security standpoint. So let's check if Annika can see that scanner. Okay, and that would appear to be a no. Let's bring up a terminal window, and we'll run the scan image -L as Annika, and see what it shows. Nope, her user does not have access to the scanner. It's probably just a permissions issue. Let's pop back to our root window, and we'll take a look. Yep, there's our issue right there. The permissions on the dev par port 0 are 660. It's owned by root and only accessible by people in the root group, which is very probably only root himself. So we have a couple options here. We can either set that parallel port to permission 666 and give read-write access to absolutely everyone. Now that's generally not a terribly good idea. Better idea would be to change the group to something like LP. So let's change the ownership on that parallel port. We'll set it to root LP. And now let's check and see if Annika is actually in the LP group. And no, Annika is only in the wheel group. So pop back to our root window, and let's modify her user. We'll actually put her into the LP group. Okay, so Annika is now in wheel and LP, but of course that's not going to be reflected for her user until she actually logs out of the system. So let's actually do a reboot here. We've changed a few things. I want to make sure those changes are persistent across a reboot. So we're back up and running. Let's log back in as root. Check and make sure we can still see our scanner. And yes, we can. Let's check the permissions and the ownership on that parallel port. Yep, that's correct. And Annika is indeed in the LP group. So all things being equal, she should be able to see that scanner. If I run a scan image -L, yes, indeed, she can see the scanner from the command line. So let's try a scan. Okay, Xsane sees the scanner. And it was set to grayscale. Let's change that to color. And try a preview. And there we go. Once again, there's the manual for my soldering station. And now let's try a proper scan and see what kind of quality we get. I'm just going to save that file, and then we'll bring it up with GQ View and take a closer look. Well, it works. It's a little grainy, but it does work. Let's log out of the Annika user, and this time I'll log in as Scott. Now, Scott is not a member of the LP group, so he's not going to be able to see that scanner as of yet. No, it's not visible from the command line or from the GUI. So let's switch to root And I'll add Scott into the LP users group. And this time I'll just log out and log back in. Let's check and make sure Scott's in the LP group. Yes, he is. And if I pull up the scanner, this time, yes, indeed, we've got access to the scanner. Okay, so this time let's try and scan some text. If I flip to a page in the soldering station manual and try and scan that, let's see what we get for quality. I'll just save that file, and let's bring it up in GQ View. Yeah, that's borderline unreadable. I mean, it works, but that's pretty terrible quality. Okay, so that was scanned at 75 dpi. Let's do that again, only this time we'll use a higher resolution. So we'll change that from 75 and bring it up to 300. This time I'm not going to bother with a preview. Let's just do a scan. Let's save that file. And we'll bring it up again in GQ View and do a comparison. Okay, there's the old one. And now with the higher resolution, let's zoom in and take a closer look. Oh yeah, that's better. It's not great, but for a 25-year-old scanner, really this is not bad. So I don't know how much use I'm going to get out of it, but really, I paid $7 for this scanner, $7 for the cable, and I had at least $14 worth of fun with it. So, if you enjoyed this one, please feel free to like and subscribe, drop a comment down below, and, as always, thanks for watching.